Welcome to Frankly Speaking Hurricanes Football with your host, Frank Masdeu. Welcome to Frankly Speaking Canes Football. Today I'm excited to bring my brother Robert Powell on the channel. We're going to talk Be a Cane. There we go, Canes, everybody. And we're going to talk about, this will be our final. Oh, I love the helmet. Robert, that's beautiful. This is good. I love it. With all the signatures on it. Who do you have on there?
This is the signatures from the 2001 team. Larry Coker. We got Larry Coker there. We got, that's right, all signed here. So,
well, we want to encourage you guys, if you're viewing us, to go ahead and hit the like button and also hit the share and subscribe. Today we're going to go in deep and we're going to finish off this video with our final predictions for game week against Alabama. We've got some interesting things to go over. The starting lineups have been announced for both teams. We'll go over those. We'll go over the strategy that Miami has to employ to stay in the game. We'll go into Alabama's strengths and weaknesses. We'll try and find one or two of their weaknesses that we might be able to exploit. So we'll start with that. But before we begin, I want to share and I want to get Robert's observations on the lineups. So I had no surprises at starting quarterback, De'Aaron King. And then one interesting, it's not a big deal, but it's an interesting thing to note, is they've got TVD, Tyler Van Dyke, or Jake Garcia. So they're not, there's not a clear number two. So it could be either or. But on the running back side, they kind of went like you and I would figure. You want to go with seniority. You want to go with people that have the most games under their belt. You want to go with stable performance. And you've got Cam Harris at 215 pounds, 5'10", is going to be the starting tailback. But interestingly enough, they put Donald Chaney or Jalen Knight, but they put Chaney ahead. Then at the receivers, Robert, we got Keyshawn Smith, a redshirt freshman. And again, to the point you've been making for several years now, we got to get taller receivers. He's at 6 foot 188, so he's a little on the light side. But backing him up is a big surprise, and that's Michael Redding III. He's 6'2", 202. Now, I read some articles that said the reason Michael Redding is in the mix is because he's got a big frame at 6'2" and 202 pounds, and he's physically imposing and strong and attacks the ball, which is something that Keyshawn Smith does as well. He actually goes after the ball. Then at the other side, you've got Rambo at 6'1", 185, redshirt junior. But the biggest surprise of all, D. Wiggins, and I didn't realize this, but he's 6'3", 195. And I'm surprised that D. Wiggins has that slot. I want to get your thoughts on that because you know how I feel about Wiggins.
Yeah. I think I was going back and forth with my son, a couple other people that I know about that selection. And right where I landed on that was we're not in practice. We don't know how far D. Wiggins has come, right? Because we have in our mind's eye last year's game, a couple big games, big drops, more concerned about breaking his fall than holding on to the ball. Mm-hmm. So that is a big surprise to many of us. But after giving it some thought, I just had to land in the place of they know. They being the coaching staff, they being the head coach, those who have worked and been with him since last season. And they walked away with, okay, this guy is ready. This guy is ready. Because there's no doubt in my mind that whoever they put out there, they believe that this is who we can win with. All right. So for us casual observers, in which we are not, we will see. We will see.
I agree with you. I think the fact that he's a junior, been in the program for 4 years. I mean, well, he's a redshirt. No, I think he's a redshirt.
It says junior.
He's a junior. He's a straight up junior. So he's
straight up junior.
Yeah, so he's straight up junior. So he's got experience. I question it, but it is what it is. But what I do notice is that there wide receiver lineup is big. They're trying to get big bodies out there.
No one under 6 foot.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
at
no
least
one
on
light.
paper.
Yeah, nobody below 185 pounds. That was the other thing too. That all these guys are 185 or better, and I think that makes a big difference. Here comes another one that will shock you. At the wide receiver, you also have Mike Harley. No surprise, he's the only one. He's at 5'11", 182. But you got Restrepo, who's at 5'10", 198. He's almost 200 pounds, backing him up. But Pope, there's nothing. Pope's not on the team. And not only that, I don't know if it hasn't. I don't know if it's been verified or not. But there's rumors circulating that he's not even going to make the trip to Atlanta. So there may have been something going on with Pope we're not aware of. But that's what they're saying. We don't know. It hasn't been confirmed. But I thought that was an interesting thing. So I think we're going to see a lot of Restrepo in there with Harley. And it'll be an interesting combination to see. The other interesting thing that I wanted to point out with you, which is no surprise, is Mallory. But the big surprise is Arroyo. You look at Arroyo, Robert, I know the print is small here. He's coming in as a true freshman at 6'4", 252. He's actually 2 pounds heavier than Mallory. At 6, and Mallory's at 6'5", 250. He's actually 2 pounds heavier as a freshman than Mallory. And I bring that to your attention because I think we'll circle back to that because I think that's kind of a significant thing that he's in there. Left tackle, we got Zion Nelson, no surprise there. Jared Williams backing him up. At left guard, we got Jalen Rivers. And my understanding is Jalen Rivers won the job outright. They even took Ja'Kai Clark and moved him as a backup to center behind Corey Gaynor because Rivers, he locked it down. And he's at 325. So the beefy part of that, the guards, we've got the left guard at Jalen Rivers, and we got the right guard at Donaldson at 348. And then the right tackle is DJ Skife. So DJ Skife, they moved him, and I heard in the press conference that his natural position was right tackle, even though he's a little undersized as far as height. He's 6'3", 305. So give me your thoughts on the offensive lineup.
I think it's right. I mean, it is good to see that Donaldson is in the lineup. Nelson, I know that there were some concerns about injuries and things of that nature, but it's good to see those guys in there. Gaynor, no surprise there. This line is experienced. No one under 315. So some big boys in there. A lot of beef there. So it's a good thing. It's really no big surprise to me on the line. And I want to go back to the tight end. They are basically identical because those 2 pounds, that 1 inch in height and 2 pounds difference, they basically are the same size, right? So tall, good size. I just wonder about the athleticism. I'm still not sold on Will Mallory athletics. I mean, on his athleticism. I think Aurora has more athleticism. I mean, is more athletic. So we will see. But the size is basically identical.
Oh yeah. And to your point, interesting thing about Will Mallory that came out of camp, Manny Diaz praised him. Will Mallory ran an 80 screen pass for 80 yards and was clocked at 22 miles an hour. And that's for a guy 250 pounds. And Manny Diaz says that he is the best shape he's ever been. And he's physically healthy for maybe the first time in a long time. He played banged up. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. But Mallory also praises Arroyo in the press conference. And Mallory says Arroyo's a real deal. Athletic, long arms, big catch radius, similar to Mallory. They both have big catch radius. So that's going to be an interesting thing. Moving on to the defense, this is kind of interesting. At defensive end, Jafari Harvey is going to be a starting defensive end, along with Harrison Hunt. And then you're going to have the backup for Hunt, because they can flip him, is going to be Silvera. But here's the interesting note. The other D tackle is Jonathan Ford. So Silvera's backing up both those two guys. So I don't know if that's just sending a message. Because, Jonathan Ford is a senior. And Harrison Hunt is a redshirt freshman. So I don't know what that speaks to. At defensive end, you've got Zach McLeod as a redshirt senior, and Chaz Williams. And then you've got Keontae Smith is starting Will. They've been raving about him. Haven't heard much about Corey Flagg in the middle, backed up by Jennings. And then Wayman Steed is backing up Smith. And you've got starting striker. This was interesting. This was another interesting development. We thought that Gilbert Frierson was going to start. No, it's Amari Carter. It's going to be your starting striker. So that I thought was interesting. Another interesting thing is that Tariq Stevenson, the sophomore transfer, he is going to be backing up Corey Couch. Gervin Hall is going to be your starting free safety. Hitchens is going to be backing him up. Bubba Bolden. And then the true freshman, James Williams, is going to be backing up Bubba Bolden. And Ivy's going to be your other starting corner, with Stevenson backing him up. So Stevenson is not starting in this game. He's going to be coming in. He'll be in the rotation a lot, but because they're going to be interchangeable. Give me your thoughts on those changes there on the defense.
Well, I see these oars all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. You have, you have that OR, right? I wonder how much weight that is. You have DJ Ivy or Tariq Stevenson. What does that mean as far as who will be starting? Is it the first person that's named, or it could be either one at game time?
I think it could be either one, and I think it's just the first series. I think it's symbolic. I think because they're going to be playing so many snaps. It's just it's symbolic. I think it's a way not to let Alabama know who your starting lineup is. Alabama's starting lineups are pretty clear. There's not a whole lot of oars, but it's a way to let you know, for you not to know who they're going to be in the mix, but they're not telling you who. They're just not telling you who. So what are your thoughts on having the interesting one? I thought was here's where I thought Corey Couch was going to go in the slot and be a starter there, and Stevens would be on the outside. But I guess there is no slot because you've got Amari Carter as a striker, which is kind of like the slot guy.
Yeah. So the way this is published, I don't know if it's mandatory that they release these things by a certain time. Mm-hmm. Tariq Stevenson, you see, is listed on both sides. So it kind of adds credibility what you just mentioned. Like, you don't know who's going to start or where. Right. The same thing with the D tackles, right?
Yes.
You have Silvera, who is on both sides. I mean, he's listed on both as an or, right? So if you're trying to game plan, like, okay, we're going to game plan with, team up on Silvera. Well, what side is he going to be on? Because he's an or. Tariq Stevenson, he's an or. Is he starting or is he not? What side is he going to be on? I think it's part of that game. I think it's part of the chess game. Because if they're studying tape, looking at the tendencies of these players, if they strong left, strong right, or whatever the case may be, those ors are basically wrenches thrown into a game plan.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, here's the interesting thing. You had asked a really good question last time we spoke. Who's going to line up and be your punt returner, and who's going to be your kick returner? According to this, Stevenson, the corner, is going to be your punt returner. Remember how much trouble we had last year with we had it with Harley and with Pope dropping the ball in punt returns. Harley's going to be your kick returner, So that's an interesting change in the lineup. So Stevenson, we're going to be seeing a lot of Stevenson. So that is pretty fascinating. So what are your thoughts overall on the defensive side of the ball?
Wait a minute. Let's go back to the kick returner. Okay, so the X-Man is going to be back there with Harley. So on kickoffs, they're going to have two guys back, and one of them is going to be. And I mean, I think both is a good choice. Punt returner, Tyreek Stevenson. Okay,
and the X-Man.
And the X-Man.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta be honest with you. I am happy to see the X-Man sprinkled all over this thing.
Yeah, me too.
All right, because if you think about spring ball, the name that kept popping up, touchdown, big plays, nice catches, is the X-Man. Very consistent. His name always had ink behind it. So I like that. I think that he deserves that based on what we've seen. You know, you're going to have your game situation. We're going to see how he does there. But I think he's going to be all right. I mean, it's really no big surprises for me, except for D. Wiggins.
That's a huge one. That's huge.
That is one that I had to settle down and just say, okay, you know, they know best. They obviously have seen with them, and he had to go into spring camp and fall camp with a lot to prove, and he must have did it. He must have did it.
Yeah.
Because Tim and Pope was in the same doghouse, at least from a spectator viewpoint. I think with the coaches too, and one proved himself and the other one didn't, because the X-Man, I think, took his spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to go quickly now over to the Alabama side, so we'll familiarize ourselves with some of the names here. Let's see if I've got them. Actually, no, we'll do this first with Bill O'Brien. I wanted to share this with you because I looked at this and I was very surprised. Bill O'Brien, the OC, when he came in, they replaced 4 out of the 5 offensive coaches. He brought in his own team. So this is an entirely brand new coaching staff. You talk about pedigree, Robert. O'Brien was a head coach at the Houston Texans, and he had a balanced and potent attack that ranked in the top 10 of the league in rushing, and he coached Deshaun Watson. So he just had tremendous success. They won 11-5 and 11-2 over the team's final 13 games. And he also coached some time with the New England Patriots. So this guy, and he was general manager of the Texans for a year. So he brought his entire crew. So we are probably catching Alabama at the best time we could possibly catch them, which is their coaching staff is in flux. It's a new staff. They've replaced 8 out of 11 starters, or 7 out of 11 starters on their offensive team. But that's not to take anything away from Alabama, because they just reloaded and they have a tremendous offensive team. So that is some concern, but I just wanted to bring that up. Unfortunately, I don't have the roster here, but I do have the roster here. The depth, I'm curious about that.
Or they just gonna say, hey, this is who we are.
Yeah, deal with it. There's no ors. This is who we are. Here it starts on offense. I don't know if you can see it, but Bryce Young, Paul Tyson, and Jalen. And then here's the thing that really freaked me out a little bit is you see Brian Robinson, the senior, number 4, is a 4-star. The Trey Sanders is a 5-star. Rodell Williams is a 5-star. Josh McClellan is a 4+ star. They've got a stable of running backs, and just be, we haven't heard of them, but they've got a tremendous stable of running backs. They've got 2 5-stars sitting in the wings. I mean, you have to go real deep into their roster. It's incredible. But Jameis Williams, the starter and wide receiver, is the kid that came from Ohio State. He's a blazer that can take the top off the defense. And then you've got Mechie, who's also a fabulous receiver. And Slade, who's a good possession receiver, has got some speed as well. Their tight end is supposed to be one of the best in the nation, is Cameron Latou. And then Evan Neal, their left tackle, is supposed to be headed in the first round, probably a top 10 pick. And their best linebacker, I think the kid's name is Williams. He's supposed to be the best outside rusher in college football, and apparently Evan Neal just sat him down during practice. He couldn't get past him. So we're going to have a challenge getting around the corner with their left tackle, no doubt. Their left guard, Cohen, he's new. Owens is new. Emil is a veteran. And Kendall Randolph is also a young starter. So it's going to be interesting to see what we're able to do against them from a defensive standpoint. Their linebackers, that's it, Christopher Allen, Christian Harris, and Henry Tutu. Their D-line is anchored by a guy named Dale, who's a massive guy. And their two defensive ends, you and I talked about it. They're 285 pounds apiece. So what they do is they run those outside linebackers off the edges that defensive ends can close the edges, and these guys are free to roam around and make plays. So if you try to go wide on them, Anderson, I think Anderson is the guy that they were talking about that's their best linebacker. He is a tremendous player. Then you've got Josh Jobe at the corner. He's the only one that he replaced Patrick Surtain II. And you've got Battle at safety, who's a great player. So their secondary is more mature. Their defense is stout and they're experienced. Now, from what I've been researching, they can be run on up the middle, but they can also begin to shut that down. In other words, you're getting yards, but you're not scoring, that type of thing. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But that's their starting lineup right there. And there's no oars, Robert. Well, wait a minute. There is an oar.
There's a few of them. Yeah.
The holder, Paul Tyson oar.
Mm-hmm.
You have free safety. There's a couple oars. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of oars in there. Yep.
So I guess that's where they have parity between the two players.
Yeah, I think it's a strategy that all teams will leverage, is using that oar. Because they know who's starting. They just want to create matchup problems or issues, keep the opposing teams somewhat guessing.
Yes. Stop that there. Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. So let me ask you this: how do you see this panning out? What are your thoughts? Let's talk about the keys to the game. Alabama, by the way, last year ranked number 3 in offense in the nation. Their defense was like in the 20s. The defense, I mean, even with our great offense, we were in the 20s, early 30s in offensive production. So, what are your thoughts going into it? What do you see?
Well, I think that the challenge for Alabama, let's just say on the defensive side, has always been a mobile quarterback, right? Being able to contain a mobile quarterback. They're aggressive up front, and the type of defense that they play. If you spread them out, and I said this in the last episode or the last session that we spoke, you spread them out, then you only have so much that you can do because your linebackers are covering. And with King being as mobile as he is, pocket breaks down, those ends get too far upfield, he'll pick up 3 to 5 yards. And 3 to 5 yards a clip for a quarterback put you in a situation, right? It means that second down, you at work. After the second down, you could be 3rd and 2, right? 3rd and 2, because you got 3 on one, you got 5 on another, or you got 2, 3 and 3. Now it's 3rd and 4. So they have to account for that. And I would imagine if you look at their performances in opening games or against teams with running quarterbacks going over the past 7 or 8 years or so, that has been their challenge, containing that quarterback. right? Because someone must account for that quarterback who is running. Now, those quarterbacks who sit back there, particularly in the early part of the year, right? They've lost so much that it could be a challenge. Now, they didn't lose a whole lot on defense, but field position is going to be a challenge if their offense can't move the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see how we come out. I was talking to another friend of mine throughout the week, big Game fan, and I made it clear that we have to come out aggressive. We cannot play textbook football. Run, set up the pass. You can't do it. I mean, you shouldn't do it. You got to put them on their heels real quick. Kids them the entire playbook is open. Trickery, all that stuff, everything. Okay, you got King sitting back there. You got a running back behind him. You split King out into as a receiver. Okay, what are they gonna do, right? It's just a whole lot of stuff. Flea flicker, just a lot of things to keep them guessing, and being very, very aggressive. So, defensive side of the ball, they're gonna have to try to confuse Bryce. Getting to him, get to him, but more importantly, have his eyes play tricks on him as far as what he's seeing and how he's reacting, right? Because that's something else that Alabama will do. They'll bring out that new quarterback, and just like we saw, I guess it was against the Georgia game, they had to pull out one quarterback and put another one in because the defense was just confusing him and he wasn't getting it done. So we will see.
To your thoughts, I share your concerns. I think on the offensive side of the ball, and this depends a lot on our offensive line. They're a year older. They went through an off season. They went through a spring practice and a fall practice, but we don't know how good they really are because it's basically the same cats with the difference at left guard where we have Jalen Rivers. That's the only real difference in the offensive line. So my concern looking at it is that Alabama runs a lot of stunts, twists up the middle. They come with pressure up the middle, and then they use their outside linebackers to buffer the edges along with their huge, stout defensive ends. But their vulnerability is the middle, in that if you're running these crossing routes behind the linebackers, you can create a lot of havoc with them. But I think it's going to be critically important for Miami to establish the run. And the more I think about it, I think that with Arroyo at 248 pounds and Mallory at 250, and Arroyo apparently can block, can catch, can do it all. If you run two tight end sets and you start running the ball and with the threat of the pass, I think you can create a lot of havoc for those linebackers. If the offensive line becomes overwhelmed by these stunts and blitzes, you can neutralize it with the tight ends. So I think the matchup there is going to be pretty interesting. If they are forced to bring Battle up into the box to safety, then that could open up some stuff for Rambo and so forth. They're claiming that, and maybe rightly so, that their linebackers are so special that they can run down King, they can run down any quarterback coming out of the backfield. It may be so, but so you're going to have to be able to run at them. And I think that's going to be the key. I think we're going to have to take some shots, no doubt about it, but we're going to have to keep King clean, or we're going to have to take some shots down the field, but also run some crossing routes. They're a veteran defense, so they've seen a lot, and they've seen the RPOs. They run an RPO program on their offensive side of the ball, which is interesting. So it's going to be, I think, depends on what that offensive line does and how they match up against that Alabama front three. If that front three can be handled by our offensive line and the two guards are free to go chase down some linebackers in the middle, then that could be something very interesting. But your little bubble screens and all those different things that I thought we could run, it might be more challenging with the speed that they have at linebacker unless that offensive line is doing a fantastic job. So my concern is that matchup. I think conservatively, we could get 24 to 30 points because of the offense that we run. On the defensive side of the ball, I have my bigger concerns, and I want you to focus on the defensive side of the ball. My concern is Alabama, even though they've got 3 new offensive linemen, a new OC, and 4 new assistants. My concern is that you and I shared it, that they're going to want to ram the ball right down your throat with 4 quality tailbacks. I mean, they'll just keep bringing them in. And our defensive line and our linebackers are the weakness of the team till proven otherwise. I mean, a huge weakness on the team. So your thoughts on that? Because if we can't control the line of scrimmage on the defensive side, it's going to be a very long game.
Yeah. I think that, what you said, I would agree with that. But just to build on that, I think they're going to bring a lot of pressure, right? I think that Miami's going to bring a lot of pressure. I think that they're going to expect the run. They're going to force him to throw. They're going to load the box. I really do. I really think that Miami's going to load the box. Say, okay, you got this new quarterback. We're going to load the box. We're going to play man. And we're going to see what's up, right? Because you load the box, I don't care how good they are, there's only so many hats you can put on, right? You only got so many offensive linemen. And if he's not getting rid of the ball, one of those defensive linemen, you could block him for so long, but they'll get free. I don't know if he's a running quarterback, if he's a scamper or not.
Well, he's a dual threat, and he's got mobility, and he can run.
Okay.
And apparently he's extremely accurate on the run. He's kind of like a what's the quarterback that Miami drafted from Alabama? Tua. He's kind of a better version of Tua as far as his ability to motor and quickness. Same size, just as accurate as Tua, right-hander, but kind of a better version. Now, I will share this with you too, which was interesting. Notes coming out of their camp, which is to be expected. He was throwing the ball extremely well, but it wasn't like the well-oiled machine that they had last year, where the timing passes were there. Their timing passes were a little bit off because the kid's learning a whole new system. So I'm with you. Miami's only chance is to put a lot of pressure, but then that creates an opportunity for Alabama to have those huge explosive plays. And we've got to limit those plays. So that's a gamble. But I think to your strategy, what you're talking about, I think Manny Diaz tipped his hat when he put Amari Carter as the striker. I mean, that tells me he's going up in the box. Amari Carter's not there to cover the back out of the backfield. Amari Carter is there to be your 4th linebacker. I mean, to put basically 8 in the box. I think you're going to see a lot of that happening. So it's going to be very interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see Williams in there. But that's my concern, is that they're going to have to get pressure, and the question is lane responsibility. When they played against North Carolina, you were right, you called it. They're going to take that North Carolina game plan because they don't want this. If they could get away with this kid throwing 12 passes in the game, that's what they're going to do. So they're gonna say, stop the run. Prove to us that you can stop the run. And we got 4-stars and 5-star running backs, and we got this massive offensive line. Prove it. And so I think that's what's going to have to happen. And I think, I think we have to come with the pressure. I think we have to come with everything. I mean, we got to put them in negative yardage on second down. They got to be looking at 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13, or 2nd and 10, or 2nd and 9. It can't be, they have to have negative plays on first down. We can't allow them to build any kind of momentum or rhythm, because if they get into a rhythm, it's going to be, and we have to worry about their tight end. They've got a tight end that's probably better than Mallory. He's athletic, he's quick, he's one of the best in the nation. So how are we going to cover him? How are we going to deal with that? So anyway, your thoughts on that? They're going to come after us with tight end. they're going to do the same. They're going to see our linebackers as a weakness, as a major weakness, and they're going to be doing little dinks and dunks, and they're going to be doing a lot of motion, and they're going to be moving the line. The linebackers are going to have to play the game of their lives. And to your point, last year, where we had all these missed tackles, we can't. There can't be any yards after catch. It's got to be you catch the ball, you go down. You catch the ball, you go down. We got killed because of yards after catch. Yak yards. Yep. It was terrible. Anyway, your thoughts on that on the defensive side?
Yeah. I think I think the same thing. I think the advantage that Miami has is their experience. If you look across that defense, up front as well as in the back, I think you showed a stat the last time we spoke. We got like 50% more games than the offense has. So I think they were at like 110 and we were at like 156, 160 or something like that. And that plays well when you have an inexperienced quarterback, you have some new linemen you're trying to break in. This is also, let's not minimize this. This is the first game of the season.
Yes.
Right? This is the first game of the season. You have a big question mark with the number one guy on the field. Big question mark. You don't know. Okay, showing it in practice. He has the black shirt on. You can't touch him. He knows it. Right? What happens in the big lights? And we're veterans back there. It's going to look a certain way one way. He's thinking it's going to look the same way, and it's not. Is he going to take off running all the time when he can't, get past his second read? And I'm pretty sure we're going to be prepared for that. But that lane discipline is going to be very important. Fortunately, we have experience now. Our defensive ends, Harvey is probably the one that has, some good experience. But, I would rather have that than to have a bunch of freshmen, people starting for the first time in the back, right? Our safeties, our corners.
Yes.
Agreed.
Huge point, Robert. That's a huge point. Those guys, you make mistakes back there, it costs you points. You make mistakes up front, it costs you yards. Or you make mistakes back there, it costs you points. There's no doubt about that. That's fantastic point. And to your point, let's talk about the defensive ends, because I had concerns about the defensive ends. DeAndre Johnson from Tennessee, he could be a great defensive end. We don't know. He's going to start. I do know that the young kid that we've got in there, Jafari, he's relatively young. He's maybe a 3-year player. Didn't see a lot of action. And then the question becomes, do we have to get sacks, or is it enough to get really good pressure and rattle the kid? And I would dare tell you that I don't think you can rattle the kid unless you sack him. Being a 5-star quarterback, you're going to have to hit him. He's going to have to go down a few times, and there's going to have to be coverage sacks. That's the other thing too. We're going to have to rely more on coverage sacks, and we're going to have to rely on stunts, and you're going to have to see a lot of Amari Carter coming on the blitz. I don't think we're going to be able to do it. I know we're not going to be able to do it with 4 linemen. I don't think we're going to be able to get enough pressure with 4 linemen. I really don't.
No. And I think we're going to see all kind of blitz packages. Manny is now calling the plays on the defensive side of the ball. I think that he's going to come up with a game plan that's going to be creative, that's going to be pressure, and it's going to challenge this young quarterback. Because granted, it's good to have a good offensive line, that's going to do it, but there's 2 slots there that these are first-time starters. And I don't know how much time. I think it's single-digit game playing time.
Yes, yeah, single digits, and one was zero games. Okay,
so now,
there you go.
So now you have a new quarterback, and one of your linemen are brand new, as far as game experience, right? And it's not like the freshman is a redshirt freshman.
Correct.
he was playing high school ball last year, right?
Right. True freshman.
So I mean that, and he's only been, I mean, that's huge. Now, granted, third, fourth game, he may be clicking. Okay, this is the speed of the game, this and that. Now, granted, he's playing against a good defense in practice. I mean, he's seeing some of the best athletes, against, some of the best coaching. They're throwing the whole thing at him, and they're throwing pressure at him. But mentally, you're not getting hit. That's
right.
A whole different thing.
Well, it's not only that. I think that this kid, the freshman with 0 games, they have 2 really young players that haven't seen a lot of action. One has seen 0. But think about it this way. Physically, they've got the tools because they wouldn't be starting for Alabama.
Oh, of course.
Where Manny's got to get creative is he's got to confuse them with these twists at the line of scrimmage, where he's got these stunts going, where they don't know. He's got to get them to miss their responsibility. So it's got to be a mind game with those young players. Physically, you're not going to beat them up straight up one-on-one. Where they're going to get exposed is when they miss an assignment. So he's going to have to create confusion on that defensive front. Now, here's the funny thing. You got Diaz coaching that defense, okay? And on the opposite side, you got this guy, this new OC who came from freaking Texas, who's seen everything, okay? So nothing Diaz is going to throw at the coach is going to be confusing. Whether their offensive line can make adjustments is a whole different story, because he's going to have to coach that into him. So it's going to be an interesting battle. It's going to be Diaz against a guy with who's been a general manager, a head coach in the NFL, who's been with the New England Patriots, the Houston Texans. So, and the offensive line coach for them is also an former NFL head coach. So that's going to be we're going to have to try and really confuse them, because physically, I could be wrong. I don't know if physically we match up pound for pound our defensive line against that offense, where we're going to beat them physically, where somebody's going to run right past one of their tackles, or athletically, or they're going to bulldoze one of them. I don't know. I have no idea. I'd be very surprised. But that brings me to special teams. What are your thoughts? We've got by the way, just so you know, I don't know if you know this, but a punter, our punter, broke a record in punting efficiency, an NCAA record, where his punt returns on his punts were the lowest ever recorded. I don't know if you know that. I was watching the coaching show, and they were talking about that. So from a punt return standpoint, he's done a phenomenal job. But to your point, and you and I have discussed this, and I want you to share your thoughts, because you and I are very passionate about this. This team has been mentally weak. We go down the field, we march 80 yards on a sustained drive, score a touchdown. Kicker kicks a great ball, and on the kickoff return, team slacks off, and they come back 60 yards, or they break one for a touchdown, or a punt, or whatever it may be. They come back with good field position. It's typically what it's been. So my understanding is they're putting starters now, more of the starters on the special teams, to prevent that from happening. They were giving a lot of reps to younger players on the special teams. I think they've gone and made a change there. What are your thoughts to that?
Well, yeah, that had to happen, because this game is going to come down, obviously to every facet of the game. But I think turnovers and field position associated to your special teams is going to be huge, right? So can we pin them? We get a good punt off. Boom. They get it. All right. We take off. We stop them less than the 25 yard line, right? Over and over again. So that's going to have to occur. We cannot be punting off or kicking off. They catch it on the 2 yard line and return it 40, 50 yards.
Yeah.
You can't do that. But if you do that, then that's going to be a weak point for us. But turnovers, field position associated to your special teams is going to be huge. It is absolutely going to be huge. because I believe in the trenches, that's going to be a battle. What's going to happen with King doing his thing, but where they can break the game open is on the special team side of the ball. I really do believe that. So, and that's without knowing who their punt return is, and the success that they've had. And I'm just talking about purely from a technical aspect of the punting game, the kickoff game, field position. Just from a technical standpoint, you cannot allow those big chunks to happen.
No, I agree. Interesting to your point. I guarantee you, this I can place a bet and win every day of the week that this is the best punt return and kickoff return team we've seen all of last year, and we'll see this year, with maybe the exception of Clemson. So we're going to have our hands full getting down the field and making those tackles. So I agree with you completely on that. Now, I'm going to ask you this question: who is the most important coach on both sides of the ball for the game coming up on the 4th?
That's a tough one. I would say the ability to make adjustments on either the defensive line or the offensive line as the game progresses. So I would say on both sides of the ball, it would be the coaches associated to the D line and O line.
No, I have to agree with you. I share your thoughts there, but I'll put another one on it. I think the most important coach in this game is not the head coach. It's a defensive coordinator, Manny Diaz. Because if they can't keep Alabama to less than 14 points in the first half, the game's over. So, in other words,
whoa, wait a minute. You said less than 14 points. Where in the first half?
In the first half. In other words, Alabama can't go over 30 points, or else we're going to. In other words, if Alabama goes into halftime, 21 or 28, and we're not matching them, which, listen, we could, but I think that we've got to keep them probably 17 points in the first half. They can't. We've got to keep them below 17 points. They can't average more than 30 points for a game against us, because if they do, I don't know that we have the ability to come from behind and catch them. So it's going to have to be. So I think Manny Diaz, his defense is on the hot seat, because if they're running, if they go into halftime with 160 yards of rushing, okay, we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. Or 200 yards of rushing. So I think Manny Diaz taking the DC position, he's put himself in the immediate hot seat, because put it to you this way. Let's say De'Aaron King and the offense scores, Brett Lashley scores 30 points, 32 points, 28 points, 34 points for the game. But we lose, 49 or 50 to 30, okay? And it's because the defense was a sieve. I think that this is going to be a big test for Diaz and a personal challenge, because he is a D coordinator by nature. So I think that matchup is going to be really critical. I don't think there's any doubt that Brett Lashley will put up 28 to 30 points. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Brett Lashley actually coached against Alabama for 2 years when he was at Auburn under Gus Malzahn. So he's got a taste of Nick Saban and knows how to probably play against him. So it's going to be very interesting. But I put it on. I think this is Manny Diaz's. This is first game out the box, and you're going up against an NFL head coach, offensive coordinator, an O-line coach from the NFL, and you've lost your two best defensive ends. I would feel much more comfortable if we had our two DNs that got drafted, Rousseau and Phillips, this year. Then I would tell you it's a different game. But we don't know anything about the defensive ends. So anyway, I want you to give me your keys to the game. I've jotted down a few keys to the game, and then we'll get to the score that we think it'll be, what we hope it'll be, and what we think it probably would be. So we're gonna have to, and we're fans, so we're gonna give our wish, but we got to see what it's gonna be. So give me your keys to the game.
So just a couple minutes of what you said there. I definitely agree about Manny and what he has to do But in today's college football game, right, your best, your your best D coordinators against a team like Alabama is going to have trouble keeping them under 30 points. And across the college football landscape, if you don't score 30 to 35 points, regardless of what defense you're playing against, the chances are you're going to lose. I don't care what team you're playing because of the way and how teams score and how quickly they can score. So, yes, there's pressure on him. I think it'll be a challenge keeping Alabama under 30, 35 points. I think that the bigger piece is the pace and the frequency by which we score, right? In our last episode, I mentioned, and I'm going to get into the keys of the game now, is that from an offensive standpoint, I believe that we're going to have to not average, we're going to hit 14 or more points a quarter. All right. So at that rate, you almost talking somewhere between 45 to 50 points that you're going to have to put up. 4 times 14, what's that, 56 points?
Yes.
But you have to be on that scale. You have to be close to 50 points if you're going to hang with Alabama. All right. So here's my keys. Here are my keys to the game. Miami's going to have to score north of 45 points. Okay. To be in and or to win the game. All right. They're going to have to keep Alabama on their toes, right? From an offensive standpoint as well as a defensive standpoint. You can't have no more than one turnover. All right. I'm not going to sit here and say there's going to be no turnovers. One turn, and even that will depend on when.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's going to depend on the situation. On the defensive side of the ball, create confusion, make him Young see things that's not there. I think that we're going to have to blitz frequently. We'll have to put pressure. We're going to have to force the game into the quarterback's hand because of his newness, because of the first game of the season. And do not let him run. Do not let him run. Because that must be their game plan. New quarterback,
yes,
just playing, 6 months in the program. Let's give him, let's hand it off, bubble passes, all that. But you're going to have to stop the run. In this case, you're going to stop the run. And I spoke of earlier, field position is going to be huge. So keys to the game, we're going to have to score north of 45 points. You're going to have to keep them on their toes from an offensive standpoint, and a defense, you have to play very, very aggressive. There's none of this, well, this is how we do it. We run to set up the pass. No. Whatever you believe their weaknesses are, go at it. Go at it hard. All right. Defense, pressure, create confusion for the offensive line, which we have a couple of new folks there, and along with the quarterback, and then field position off of special teams. So those are my 4 keys to the game.
Well, that's good. I thought about this, and I've come up with about 15 keys. First, we've got to go north of 35 points. You and I agree. You said 40. We got as far. I'm 35 points at least. If we don't have 35 points, we're not even in the game.
No.
If we're below 30, we're not even competitive. It's right. Not even okay. We've got to hold them to between 30 and 35 points. I think that's going to be. If they go over 40 points, it's going to kill us. We've got to hold them, I believe, to less than 175 yards rushing. I really do. An average of less than 4.2 per carry, something like that. So it's and make no bones about it. we're lucky in that this quarterback, he may be a great passer and he is a great thrower. He hasn't done it yet. So we've got to make them throw the ball. We've got to take away the running option, period, so that defensive line doesn't get mauled. And because they're going to test us. They're going to come right up. That first thing they're going to do is test us on us. So if we don't win that battle, the game's over. We're going to have a rushing average on our side per carry, not necessarily the number of yards, but we're going to have to average at least 5.5 per carry, so that way we can keep them on their heels. We're going to have to give up less than 2 sacks for the whole game. If Alabama gets more than 2 sacks on us, again, we're heading in the wrong direction. We're going to have to pick up at least a couple turnovers, whether they be interceptions or fumbles, some kind of special team play, something. We're going to have change of possession, a sudden change of possession for our team. We're going to have at least 2 125-yard plus receivers in this game. I'm talking about outside receivers, at least 2, whether it's Rambo and Harley or it's Keyshawn. I mean, whether it's Smith, it doesn't matter. It's going to have, or Restrepo. Somebody's going to have to eat up a lot of yardage. In addition to that, I believe we're going to have at least 1 tight end that has over 100 yards receiving in that game to stretch that defense. Okay. I really believe that. We're going to have to hold Alabama to less than 350 yards passing. Okay. And that's kind of a flip type thing, because if Alabama's running the ball, we can hold them to less than 350. That means nothing because they're just running it down our throats. So it's got to be holding them to less than 175 and so we have to hold them to less than 500 total yards for the game, 450 to 500 yards. We have to have less than 75 yards in penalties for the entire game. We didn't even talk about that. Alabama's discipline. If they get 2 penalties, well, they're a young team. They might get penalties on offense. So, but we can't afford to have more than 75 yards in penalties. No stupid unsportsmanlike plays where we lose the game, we're playing a great game, and we do something boneheaded. We've got to run up tempo at least 75% of the plays. We've got to have at least 80 to 90 plays in the game. We've got to have at least 6 explosive plays in the game that go for over 25 yards, at least 6. And we have to have 1 special team change of possession, whether it's a fumble or a punt return for a touchdown, or puts us in the scoring position. And so those are the key. So we have to be almost picture perfect.
Yeah. Based on that, But I think where we're both landing on this thing is that Miami is going to have to be aggressive, minimum mistakes, right? Yes. And we have to score points. We have to score points. And earlier when I said we can't average, what I mean by that is that you can't have a goose egg in one quarter and try to get 14, 20 points in another quarter, because they're not going to let you. They're not going to let you. So you have to score in quarters, 12 to 14 points a quarter, 12 to 14 points a quarter, 12 to 14 points a quarter. Otherwise, to play catch up, it ain't going to happen.
It ain't going to happen.
It's not going to happen. If we fall down, 7 to 21, we fall down, 13, we got a touchdown and 2 field goals, and now it's 13 to 28. People say, well, wait a minute, that's less than 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
It just can't. You can't be behind more than a touchdown.
No.
You can't be now. Maybe 10 points. Maybe 10.
Doubt it.
But if you're down by 10 and then they kick off to us, you better score.
You better score.
Because if you punt off and they now get the ball and they're up by 10, there's a good chance they're going to at least go up by 13.
Yeah.
Most likely go up by 17. They go up by 17.
Yeah.
They go up by 17 at any point in the game. Any point. It's a tough battle, baby.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a tough battle.
I agree. And I'll throw a couple more at you. I think we have to have at least an 80% red zone conversion rate. I'm talking 80% to touchdowns. You're gonna have to score every time you get in the red zone. You have to walk away with a field goal, but 80% of the time it's got to be 7 points. It can't be. You can't be doing this. So you've got to gamble. I'm not worried about that part. And they've got to finish strong at the end of the second quarter, and they've got to finish strong in the fourth quarter. So they're going to have to play a lot of the reserves, and they're going to have to trust that. And Alabama's got some great reserves. But it's going to be a very interesting, dynamic game. So let's get down to the prediction time. What is your Hurricane win? What would a win look like point wise for Miami? Let's start with that.
Yeah. And I like how you're doing this because we're going to give two, right? We're going to say for Miami to win. Okay. For Miami to win, I would say the score is going to have to be something like 45-40, 45-41. All right. It's not going to be a blowout. We could be sitting on 45, 2 minutes left, and they have 40 points. A touchdown will win it for them. I mean, I'm talking like we're on our edge of our seats. So, like I said, I'm sticking to the notion that we have to score north of 45. So I'll put them right at 45. All right. 45-40, 45-41, whatever it is. For Miami to win, they have to have 45 points or more, and then obviously Alabama has to have less than that. I believe they'll be in the 40s. Now, which side of the 40 will depend. Now, that's for Miami. Alabama, I would say that it could be 45-30. I would still say the same thing, that Alabama 45, 48 points, and then we have like 35, 40 points. It's 35-48, something like that, right? I do believe that if Alabama gets into the 40s, it's going to be the high 40s. And it means that they probably have more possessions than us. We've had a couple of turnovers, which is going to limit our scoring, right? It's going to limit our scoring, which is going to keep us under 40, right? So I put Alabama, if they win, somewhere around 48 points, and we got like 35 or something like that.
I hear you. I think for us to get that, you're talking about 8 possessions. You're talking about you're going to have 8 to 9 possessions normally in a game. So you'd have to score a touchdown on every single possession, or you'd have to have a change of possession, a rapid change of possession to do that. So that's a tall order. I'll give you mine. I think Miami to win, it would have to be something like 42-35 against Alabama. And here's my thinking on that. For us to have a chance, I gotta believe that Alabama's offense is not functioning on all 8 cylinders yet, because they've replaced 8 out of 11 players. They've got an entirely new coaching staff. They're going to have substitutions coming in and off the field. They're going to be moving, running. They're going to be moving wide, and the wide receivers are all new except for Mechie. So I think that they're not going to be hitting on all cylinders. If this was game 3 or 4 or 5 in the season, I would agree with you. They go over 50 points, and we might not even have a chance at that point. But I think that because it's such a new thing, new quarterback, 8 of the 11 players are new, or 7 of the 11 players are new. I think that's going to play into a lower scoring dynamic for Alabama. If our defense can handle their offensive line, that's a big if. So that's what I put for us to win would be 42-35, which means now on the opposite side, we've got a year under Rhett Lashley's system. We're returning like 90% of the production. Okay. Actually, I think we're returning 100% of the production on offense. No, we lost Jordan, the tight end.
Yeah.
So we lost one player out of 11. So we're returning like 90% of the offensive production. So we had a fall camp and a spring camp. So we should be firing on 100% cylinders. That's if D'Eriq King's health is 100%, which it looks to be. So I think we have the really good potential to score 42 points or maybe more. And now again, flip that over. Alabama's defense is a tremendous defense, and they've got a year under their belt. they're returning most of their production on the defensive side of the ball. So it's kind of an evenly matched. So it depends on how our offense does and how we scheme against their defense. So I'm picking 42-35 Miami in that situation if we're able to overcome Alabama's defensive front. If we can handle that defensive front, I think we can score a lot of points. And there's enough unknowns that they could help us. I'm going to flip it to you on the other side. If we lose, I think it's going to look like 42 Bama, 24 Miami, where that defense for Bama chokes us down, and the 24 points we get against Bama will be garbage points in the fourth quarter, where they're bringing in their reserves, and we're actually 42-17. We score a late touchdown to make it respectable, and that's not how I want it to go. But that's what the betting lines in Vegas are saying. And the other thing is Bama tends to roll late. They tend to, you stay with them till the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter they start wearing you down, and the spread starts to increase. To your point, if they get up on you on 10 points, Katie bar the door, because if you don't come back and match them point for point, you're losing that race. So that being said, your final thoughts, Robert?
Well, this game we've been looking forward to for some time now, right? I think that this was announced 6-7 years ago that this game was going to be played. And every Miami fan has been, looking forward to this game. And here we are, we're about 3 days out. And it is an exciting time. I think that unlike games that we've played in the past, the Clemson, you remember how that went, LSU, how that game went, those big name programs that we've played. This is going to be different. This is going to be different. I just feel that it's going to be different because of the, how should I say, the coming together, if you will, of the offense, right? We've had a full year of play, a full off season. We have consistency in the quarterback finally, 2 years of a good quarterback and a good offensive coordinator. I think that's going to show itself in this game. We haven't had that in the past. The maturity of our team also is different. It's different. Across the board, we are a mature team, which should play well and experience the things that we've seen, the games that we've played. So, good game. Alabama's going to bring it. They are a fantastic organization, good team, and we'll find out as Hurricane fans. I firmly believe this, where we stand, right? We had that year against Florida, we had LSU, we had Clemson, and just could make it happen. Florida was a close game, but they ended up pulling away. LSU handed it to us, and Clemson handed it to us. But I don't think this game is going to be like that. I really don't. So looking forward to it. Can't wait. Excited. And I'll be all in. I'll tell you. Can't wait to see it.
You and me both. I'll share my final thoughts. We have to remember something, too. This is not a neutral site game. It is in Georgia. It's not in Alabama, but that's Georgia's backyard. Yeah. That's Alabama's backyard.
Of course it is.
And by the way, just so you know, I found this fascinating. They play Miami, and then guess who Alabama plays? I think it's either the next game or the one after. I think it's the one after. It's the third game of the season. Guess who they play?
Who?
Florida.
Really?
They play the game. And a lot of mention has been made that Saban strategically planned it that way or wanted it that way because he so heavily recruits South Florida. There's a huge percentage of Florida kids on that roster, from St. Thomas, from ING, all over. It's just peppered with Florida kids. So how we show out against Alabama is going to be critical in the recruiting, and that's always a big component. Same thing for Florida. So we'll see what happens, but I'm with you. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think that first game of the season, defenses usually play stronger than the offensive side of the ball. It takes a little time for the offense to start getting its momentum, even though I will tell you this, which is scares me. They were talking about that our first team offense was really racking up the numbers against our first team defense. And that's not always a great sign. So
No.
we'll leave it with that. Brother, thank you so much for joining in this meeting. God bless you. We'll watch the game together, and we'll come back and share a video clip with the rest of you guys. Please, I love the helmet. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Share all this information. Go Canes. Yeah, strike the bell for alerts. Go Canes. God bless you, man. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Bye.